Picture this. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has been running the show across the stars. These alien civilizations live on what they proudly call garden worlds. And when I say garden worlds, I mean absolutely perfect planets where the biggest environmental challenge might be deciding whether to wear a light jacket or just a t-shirt. We're talking about worlds where the weather forecast never changes beyond partly cloudy with a chance of gentle sunshine. The most dangerous creature you might encounter would be something that looks like a butterfly, but sings pretty songs instead of just fluttering around. Think about the most peaceful suburb you can imagine, then multiply that by an entire planet. These aliens wake up every morning knowing exactly what the day will bring. No storms, no earthquakes, no floods, no droughts. Their biggest worry might be whether the local equivalent of daisies in their perfectly maintained parks might grow a few inches taller than usual. Some of their politicians actually campaign on platforms about regulating flower height. That's how comfortable their lives are. For 3 millennia, this has been their reality. The Galactic Council consists of hundreds of these civilizations, all living in this bubble of perfect safety and comfort. Their technology is impressive. Sure, they've got ships that can cross star systems, energy weapons that can cut through asteroids, and defensive shields that can deflect most known forms of attack. But here's the thing about living in paradise for so long. You forget that the universe can be a really, really dangerous place. Their military forces, if you can even call them that, are more like cosmic police officers. They deal with the occasional space pirate or settle disputes between trading partners. The most combat experience any of their soldiers have is maybe stopping some smugglers or breaking up a bar fight on a space station. Their weapons are designed to be clean, efficient, and non-messy. Everything about their approach to conflict is civilized, organized, and predictable. Then something crawled out of the deepest, darkest corners of space that changed everything overnight. They called them the Devourers, and that name doesn't even begin to describe the horror these things brought with them. Imagine the worst nightmare you've ever had, then realize it's actually real, and it's heading straight for your home. These weren't just hostile aliens looking to conquer territory or steal resources. No, these were something far worse. Silicon-based creatures that didn't just destroy planets. They literally ate them. When I say ate them, I mean they consumed everything. The plants, the animals, the atmosphere, even the soil itself. They would descend on a world like a plague of locusts, but instead of leaving empty fields behind, they left nothing but bare rock floating in space. Entire ecosystems that had taken millions of years to develop would be gone in a matter of days. Rivers would dry up as these things drank them. Forests would vanish as they devoured every tree, every blade of grass, every microorganism in the soil. The Council's first encounter with the Devourers happened at a peaceful mining colony called Haven's Rest. It was a small world, maybe 10 million inhabitants, known for its beautiful crystal formations and friendly locals. The colonists were so confident in the Council protection that they didn't even have proper defensive systems. Just a few patrol ships for show. The Devourers arrived without warning. No diplomatic signals, no demands, no negotiations. They just started eating everything in sight. The Council's fancy plasma weapons, which could slice through battle cruisers like butter, bounced right off these creatures. Worse yet, the Devourers seemed to actually enjoy being shot at with energy weapons. They absorbed the plasma blasts and seemed to grow stronger from them. The defensive shields that had protected Council worlds for centuries became dinner for these monsters. The harder the Council fought using their traditional methods, the stronger the Devourers became. It was like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. 17 worlds went silent in just a few months. 17 entire planets, each home to millions or even billions of beings, reduced to lifeless rocks. The speed of the devastation shocked everyone. These weren't prolonged sieges or lengthy military campaigns. These were quick, efficient extinctions. Entire civilizations vanished faster than the Council could even mobilize proper response teams. Panic spread to the galaxy like wildfire. Worlds that had never known fear suddenly found themselves building bunkers and hoarding supplies. The Council's calm order meetings turned into desperate shouting matches as representatives demanded action, protection, anything that might save their homes from becoming the next meal for these cosmic monsters. That's when the Galactic Council did something they had never done in their 3,000 years of peaceful rule. they abandoned their pride and sent out a galaxy-wide distress signal. They broadcast on every frequency they knew, reaching out to anyone, anywhere, who might possibly help them survive what was looking like the end of civilized life in the galaxy. Little did they know that their desperate cry for help was about to wake something that had been quietly watching from the shadows for centuries. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, in a place so cold and remote that most people don't even know it exists, something incredible was happening. Hidden monitoring stations that had been secretly operating for centuries suddenly came alive with activity. These weren't your typical research facilities. We're talking about massive underground complexes buried so deep under the ice that even the most powerful surface scanners would never detect them. Picture this. 2 kilometers straight down through solid rock and ice, there's an entire network of rooms and corridors where humanity's best and brightest have been quietly watching the stars for generations. These facilities make the most advanced spy headquarters look like amateur hour. Banks, computers, quantum processors, and communication arrays that could intercept signals from across the galaxy, all of it powered by geothermal energy tapped from the Earth's core itself. When that desperate cry for help from the Galactic Council came crackling through space, it wasn't NASA or any public space agency that picked it up first. It was these hidden watchers, the people who have been humanity's secret eyes and ears in the cosmos for longer than most folks realize. The signal came through clear as day, and within minutes, teams of linguists and cryptographers were working around the clock to decode every word of that alien distress call. Now here's the thing most people don't know about humanity's relationship with the galaxy. We've been a cosmic equivalent of that kid in school who sits in the back corner, quietly observing everything but never raising their hand. Way back when we first developed technology capable of reaching beyond our solar system, we tried the friendly approach. We sent out greeting signals, peaceful messages, even some basic mathematical concepts to show we were intelligent and meant no harm. The response? Let's just say it wasn't exactly a warm welcome. Our first contact attempts went about as well as showing up to a fancy dinner party, wearing muddy boots and a torn jacket. The galactic community took one look at Earth, a planet where storms can level entire cities, where the ground literally shakes and splits apart, where the weather can swing from scorching desert heat to deadly blizzards within the same day. And they were horrified. They labeled our beautiful blue planet as a Class 12 hazard world. To put that in perspective, most civilized worlds rank as Class 1 or 2 on their safety scale. Class 12 means they considered Earth so dangerous that just living here proved humans were essentially cosmic barbarians. We were deemed too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous for their polite galactic society. They basically put up a do not contact sign around our entire solar system. So what did humanity do? We learned to watch and wait. For centuries, we've been the galaxy's hidden observers, building secret facilities like this Antarctic base and others scattered across Earth, and even on the dark side of the moon. We monitored their communications, studied their technology, learned their languages, and gradually built up a complete picture of galactic civilization, all while staying completely invisible. Commander Rick Thompson stood in the main briefing room, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays, showing the decoded alien message. This room had seen plenty of heated discussions over the years, but nothing quite like this. Around the massive conference table, military leaders and government officials were engaged in the kind of debate that would determine humanity's future. The message itself was terrifying in its simplicity. These devourers weren't just another hostile alien race. They were something that had the entire galaxy running scared. 17 worlds had already gone silent. Their populations either fled or consumed entirely. The descriptions of these silicon-based monsters made even the most hardened military veterans uncomfortable. General Patricia Webb, a woman who had spent her entire career preparing for threats that most people couldn't even imagine, was adamant about immediate action. "Look at the timeline," she said, pointing to the tactical displays. "They're expanding outward from the galactic core in a clear pattern. Even if we do nothing, even if we stay hidden, they're going to reach our sector eventually." Around the table, others argue for caution. Politicians worried about revealing humanity's true capabilities. Some military advisors questioned whether getting involved in a galactic war was worth the risk of exposure. After all, we'd spent centuries building the perfect cover. Why blow it now for aliens who had rejected us from the start? The debate raged for hours, with voices rising and tempers flaring. But everything changed when the long-range sensors delivered their final analysis. The computer models were crystal clear. Based on the Devourer's current expansion rate and trajectory, they would reach our solar system within decades, maybe less. That's when the arguing stopped. That's when everyone in that room realized this wasn't about helping ungrateful aliens or playing galactic hero. This was about survival. Not just humanity's survival, but the survival of everything we held dear. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was going to war. But we wouldn't do it their way, with fancy energy weapons and polite combat protocols. We'd do it our way, the way that comes naturally to a species that evolved by fighting everything from ice ages to each other. The galaxy was about to discover what happens when you wake up the species from the Class 12 hazard world. The first hint that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy came during what history would remember as the Battle of Kepler Station. This wasn't supposed to be a major engagement, just another desperate holding action while Council forces tried to buy time for civilian evacuations. Kepler Station was a mining outpost on the edge of civilized space, home to maybe 3 million beings who worked the asteroid fields nearby. The Devourers had been systematically working their way through this sector for weeks. Every defensive position the Council established, every carefully planned ambush, every last-ditch stand, all of it had failed miserably. Their energy weapons continued to feed these monsters, and their tactical doctrine of clean, efficient combat was completely useless against an enemy that didn't follow any rules. Admiral Chen Rodriguez of the Council Defense Fleet was coordinating what everyone knew would be another retreat. His mixed-species fleet of elegant ships, all smooth curves and gleaming metal, was preparing to fall back to the next offensive line when something impossible started happening on their sensors. At first, the sensor operators thought it was equipment failure. Ships were appearing on their screens from literally nowhere, dropping out of some kind of stealth that their most advanced scanners couldn't even detect. But these weren't Council vessels. These weren't like anything in their databases. Where galactic ships were built for beauty as much as function, long, graceful designs that looked more like art pieces than weapons of war. These new arrivals looked like someone had taken chunks of dark metal and welded them into the shape of pure aggression. They were angular, blocky, covered in what looked like armor plating thick enough to stop an asteroid. No elegant curves, no aesthetic considerations, just brutal, functional design that screamed one thing. These ships were built to survive whatever the universe could throw at them. The aliens watching from their retreating vessels were stunned by how these mysterious ships moved. Galactic vessels glided through space with computer-controlled precision, following optimal flight paths calculated to minimize energy expenditure. These new ships moved like living predators, weaving between debris fields and dancing around enemy fire with an almost organic fluidity that seemed impossible for something made of metal and engines. Captain Robert Chen's voice cut through the chaos on the communication channels, speaking in accented but clear galactic standard. All Council forces, this is Captain Chun of the Human Defense Fleet. Pull back to minimum safe distance and observe. We're taking point on this engagement. Human Defense Fleet? The Council officers looked at each other in confusion. Humans were supposed to be primitive savages from some quarantined death world. What were they doing here? And how did they have ships that could appear and disappear at will? The answer became clear moments later when the human fleet engaged a devourer swarm. Instead of the usual energy weapons that the galaxy relied on, these ships opened up with something completely different. Solid projectiles, actual chunks of metal, screamed through space at velocities that made the watching aliens check their instruments twice. All units, focus fire on Grid 7 Alpha. Captain Chen's calm voice continued over the communications. These things eat energy, but let's see how they handle good old-fashioned kinetic rounds. The depleted uranium shells hit the Devourers at significant fractions of light speed, each impact carrying enough kinetic energy to crack planets. But it wasn't just the raw power that shocked the galactic observers. It was the way humans fought. Where Council forces had tried to maintain formation and follow established combat protocols, the humans seemed to fight like a pack of wolves, each ship supporting the others while maintaining complete tactical flexibility. What really amazed the watching aliens was how quickly the humans adapted. Within minutes of engagement, their tactics were already evolving. When some devourers proved resistant to kinetic rounds, human ships switched to nuclear-tipped missiles that didn't rely on energy that could be absorbed. When the enemy tried to swarm individual human vessels, the entire fleet would instantly reconfigure to provide overlapping fields of fire. Admiral Rodriguez watched in fascination as human AI systems seemed to learn and adapt in real time. Their targeting computers analyzed each devourer's behavior patterns, predicted their movements, and adjusted tactics accordingly. It was like watching a chess master play against a computer, except both the chess master and the computer were the same person, and they were learning new rules with every move. But perhaps most shocking of all was the cold, methodical way humans approached the battle. There was no panic, no desperate last stands, no heroic sacrifices, just calculating, professional efficiency as they systematically identified the devourer's weaknesses and exploited them with ruthless precision. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the devourer's swarm that had been terrorizing the sector for weeks was nothing but floating debris. The human fleet regrouped with the same quiet professionalism they'd shown throughout the engagement, as if destroying cosmic horrors was just another day at the office. The galaxy was about to learn that when you spend centuries evolving on a world where everything is trying to kill you, you get very, very good at killing back. First contact protocols finally kicked in after human forces had pushed the devourers back from 3 entire star systems. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was dealing with a species that had emerged from complete obscurity to single-handedly turn the tide of what everyone thought was an unwinnable war. The bureaucrats and diplomats who usually handled these situations were completely out of their depth. They'd never had to figure out how to formally thank someone for saving civilization itself. Council Ambassador Veltron was chosen for this historic meeting, partly because of his diplomatic experience, but mostly because he was one of the few council members brave enough to actually board a human warship. Veltron was what you might call the perfect example of galactic civilization, a delicate crystalline being whose species had evolved on a world where the most dramatic weather event was a light morning mist that lasted maybe 20 minutes once a year. The ambassador's homeworld was so stable that his people had never developed concepts for natural disasters. They didn't have words for earthquakes, hurricanes, or volcanic eruptions because such things simply didn't exist in their experience. The most dangerous creature on their planet was roughly equivalent to a butterfly that sang lullabies. This was a being who had literally never seen a cloudy day, never felt rain, never experienced anything more uncomfortable than having to wait an extra few minutes for his preferred temperature of morning beverage. The meeting took place aboard the human flagship, a massive vessel that looked more like a flying mountain than a spaceship. When Veltron shuttle docked, he was immediately struck by the difference in design philosophy. Where council ships were filled with soft lighting, comfortable furnishings, and climate-controlled environments that never varied by more than a degree or two, the human ship felt almost primitive by comparison. The corridors were lined with what looked like blast-resistant metal plating. The lighting was harsh and functional rather than soothing. Everything seemed to be built not for comfort, but for survival under the worst possible conditions. Even the air felt different, recycled through systems designed to keep working even if half the ship was destroyed. Admiral Janet Miller met the ambassador in the main conference room, and Veltron's first shock was visual. The human commander was clearly a female of her species, but she was covered in what his translator identified as scars, permanent marks left by previous injuries. The concept was so foreign to him that he had to ask his computer to explain it 3 times. On his world, medical technology had been so advanced for so long that permanent injury was literally impossible. You evolved where? Veltron's translator actually stuttered as Admiral Miller began explaining humanity's origins. The delicate alien's crystalline features seemed to dim as he tried to process words like extinction event, ice age, and supervolcano. His people had never experienced anything remotely similar. The closest they'd come to planetary danger was a meteor shower that had produced some particularly colorful light displays in their sky. Admiral Miller, a woman who'd earned every one of those scars in conflicts the galaxy couldn't even imagine, patiently tried to explain Earth's history. Our planet goes through regular ice ages, she said, as if discussing the weather. Every 100,000 years or so, most of the surface gets covered in ice sheets several miles thick. The species that survive are the ones that adapt fastest. Velturun's translator was working overtime trying to find equivalent concepts in his language. When the Admiral mentioned that humans had survived multiple extinction events, cosmic impacts that had wiped out entire evolutionary lines, the poor alien actually had to sit down. His species' worst historical catastrophe had been a volcanic eruption that had covered about 6 square miles in ash, and even that was considered a legendary disaster. Our medical technology, Admiral Miller continued matter-of-factly, comes from treating injuries that would instantly kill most of your people. She gestured to a scar along her jaw. This came from shrapnel during a training exercise on your world. That kind of trauma would probably be fatal because your people never developed the biological or technological responses to handle it. The alien ambassador's translator kept pausing as it encountered concepts that simply didn't exist in his language. Apex predator took several minutes to explain, and even then, Velturun couldn't quite grasp how a single species could dominate an entire planet's food web. His world's most successful species were the ones that had learned to cooperate most efficiently with their environment, not conquer it. Our engineering solutions, the Admiral went on, were forged in environments hot enough to melt your ship's hulls. We build things to survive in conditions that would kill your people instantly. Inside active volcanoes, under crushing ocean pressure, in temperatures that swing from hot enough to boil water to cold enough to freeze nitrogen solid. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when Admiral Miller explained human military history. 3,000 years of fighting ourselves taught us a few things about warfare, she said with what Velturun was learning to recognize as typical human understatement. The concept of a species that had spent millennia in conflict with itself was so alien to Council thinking that several translation programs actually crashed trying to process it. As the meeting continued, Velturun slowly began to understand why the humans had been so effective against the Devourers. They weren't just another spacefaring species. They were survivors in the truest sense, shaped by a world that had been trying to kill them since the day their ancestors first stood upright. The galaxy was meeting its guardians, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. The last Devourer hive ship died in the ruins of what had once been the Altara system, its death throes lighting up senses across half the galaxy like the biggest fireworks display in cosmic history. This wasn't just any hive ship. This was the queen mother of all nightmares, a massive biomechanical horde the size of a small moon that had been coordinating the entire swarm for months. When it finally went down, the explosion was so intense that astronomers on worlds 3 star systems away saw the flash with their naked eyes. The battle to destroy that final hive ship had been unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human forces had spent weeks carefully herding the scattered Devourer remnants toward this one location, using tactics that the Council's military advisors were still trying to understand. Instead of the usual direct assault approach that galactic forces favored, humans had fought like persistence hunters, the same way their ancestors had hunted mammoths on the African plains thousands of years ago. They'd harass the Devourers, hit and run attacks that never gave the enemy time to feed or regenerate. They'd use the destroyed star system itself as a weapon, manipulating the gravitational fields of dead planets and debris to create killing zones where the monsters couldn't escape. And when that final queen ship tried to make its last stand among the ruins of what had once been a thriving solar system, humanity showed the galaxy what total war really looked like. The aftermath was something to behold. Cleanup crews, mostly automated drones guided by human operators who'd learned to work in the most hostile environments imaginable, began the massive job of cataloging the damage across dozens of star systems. Refugee ships started the long journey back to worlds that had been considered lost forever. Medical teams, many of them human now, worked around the clock to treat survivors who'd been living in overcrowded evacuation centers for months. But perhaps the most remarkable thing was how quickly human engineering teams got to work restoring basic infrastructure to the reclaimed worlds. Where Council reconstruction efforts typically took years of careful planning and committee meetings, human crews just rolled up their sleeves and started fixing things. They learned to rebuild quickly on a planet where natural disasters could wipe out entire cities overnight. The Galactic Council, still trying to process the fact that their ancient civilization had been saved by people they'd written off as primitive barbarians, called an emergency session to figure out how to properly thank humanity. The debate went on for days. Some council members wanted to offer humans full membership with all the privileges that came with it. Others suggested massive technology transfers that would advance human civilization by thousands of years overnight. In the end, they decided to offer everything: full council membership, access to their most advanced technologies, territorial rights to some of the most valuable real estate in the galactic core, planets where a single city lot would be worth more than most star systems. They prepared speeches about how humanity had earned a place among the galaxy's great civilizations, how they deserved to share in the prosperity and safety that the Council had built over millennia. The formal ceremony was held on Nexus Prime, the Council's capital world, and possibly the most beautiful planet in the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, a massive crystal dome that could hold 1 million beings and still have room for more. They expected the human delegation to be overwhelmed by the honor, grateful for the recognition, eager to finally join galactic society as equals. Admiral Kevin Murphy, speaking for Earth's unified command, listened politely to the long list of offers and privileges. Then he stood up, adjusted his simple military uniform that looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial gear of the other delegates, and gave them an answer that would become legend throughout the galaxy. "We appreciate the offer, really we do," he said, his words carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. "But here's the thing. Someone needs to watch the dark spaces between stars. Someone needs to stand guard while you sleep safely in your garden worlds." The silence in that great hall was absolute. Council members looked at each other in confusion. They were offering humanity riches beyond imagination, and the humans seemed to be turning it down. Admiral Murphy continued, "We've been doing it anyway for centuries, watching the dark corners where nasty things like to hide. Might as well do it officially." He paused, looking around at all those alien faces. "You folks are good at building civilizations, creating art, making life beautiful and peaceful. That's important work, and someone needs to protect it. We're good at the other thing, dealing with the monsters that show up when you least expect them." And that's exactly what happened. As human patrol fleets took up positions along the galactic rim, and deep space monitoring stations extended their reach into the void, the galaxy's general civilizations finally understood what they'd gained. The Deathworlders hadn't just emerged from shadow to save them from one threat. They had become the permanent guardians, standing watch against whatever other horrors might be lurking in the darkness, waiting for their chance to feed. The galaxy could sleep peacefully again, knowing that humanity was standing guard.